So what we did was I had two research assistants code every single ad. They made a really simple dichotomous decision. Is this sexual in content at all or not? And then we sort of redid all the analyses, looking to see if the error had anything to do with the particular ads that were sexual in tone. So the one example I already put up of the male ad that was sexual in tone was the guy that's pretty obvious, I love sex. That was obviously sexual in tone. The female ones that were rated as sexual in tone differed a bit in terms of their quality from the males. So this is one that both judges rated as sexual. She wants someone to caress her face and as they kiss, and won't get upset if I decide to kiss another man. So she's kind of advertising an interest in promiscuity. Human beings are not meant to be paired for life like lobsters. Apparently I missed the Friends episode where this is based on. I don't know if anyone has seen this. And my friend Steve is a lobster scientist. He's a marine biologist. I asked him, I said, is that right? Are they monogamous? And turns out that according to Steve Geher, at least, the monogamy of lobsters is highly overrated. Certain conditions under which you see almost monogamous-like kind of behavior. In any case, this woman doesn't seem particularly interested in monogamy. So this is one that was rated as sexual in nature. So we defined the male error management, or the adaptive bias for males, which was first it had to be that the men were significantly off in their judgment. They were inaccurate in terms of what women really wanted. And secondly, we were interested in whether they overestimated the degree to which the females chose the sexually charged item. And that would be evidence for this over-sexualization bias that Kaufman and Buss talked about. So that's exactly what we found when we used this scheme to think about the example we've already looked at. So this is an example where the men were inaccurate in guessing what women wanted. And if you look at it in terms of which ads are sexual and which ads are not, what they're doing is overestimating the degree to which the woman is interested in the highly sexualized ad. So that was just one example. And when we looked at overall male results, in terms of long-term judgments, there wasn't really a lot of error, so we couldn't really do this kind of analysis. But in terms of the short-term judgment, there were 5 instances in which men could have erred by overestimating females' tendency to want the sexual ad. And in every last one of those cases, that's exactly what men did. Was they erred, and the reason they erred was that they overestimated the degree to which the women wanted the relatively sexual ad, which we thought was a pretty strong case for that adaptive bias. For the female error management, we actually used a very similar scheme. First, we looked at instances in which the females were significantly wrong in terms of guessing what men wanted, and then we wanted to see if they were overestimating the degree to which men wanted the sexually charged ad, which would be something of documenting sort of the men are always pigs bias, which is the flip side of the Finnian skepticism bias. And so again, that's pretty much what we found. So here's one of the ads from the female, or one of the examples from the female short term. Men were initially given these 3, A, B, and C, and they were asked which one of these women would you want to sleep with. And the E column, the expected column, is essentially the men's actual answers. 59% of the men wanted A. Well, what does A look like? Something that men actually like more.
Scientifically proved 7th grader.
So the sandwich is interesting. The second one is the one that was sexually charged. That's what you might think of her as the lobster woman. Only 26% of the men wanted her. Of men wanted her. So what's her ad look like? She knows all the words to Greece. And advertising puts that at the top. Right? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that one was not rated as particularly sexually attractive. So then when you look at the category O, or the observed frequencies, what you find was that there was a big error. When we look at the chi-square at the bottom, the chi-square is 133. That means that there was a giant error overall in the female's judgment. So what was the nature of their error? Well, the women didn't get how important the sandwich was. Only 38% of them said, I think men want that. 58% of them thought the men wanted the one that was sexually charged. So they're over-sexualizing men's mating psychology, mating desires, which might be adaptive because of the issues tied to parental investment. Summary of the female results. So when we looked at the female judgments, for long-term judgments, we found the exact same thing for females for long-term and the short-term judgments. For long-term judgments, there were 5 cases where they could have overestimated what men wanted, or erred by overestimating sexual interest, and that's exactly what they did. So even if they were making a judgment, what does a man want for a marriage partner? The answer was, I think he just wants sex, and even more so than men actually did. And for the short-term judgments, they made the same thing. So it might actually be not the men are all pigs, but the men are always pigs bias, because even when thinking about men making long-term judgments, what do you want in a marriage partner, or a short-term judgment, they seem to be employing the same kind of bias. In terms of the implications of this research, clearly there's implications regarding sex differences. There's finding that men are overall more accurate in these knowing the desires of mating compared with females is actually replicated by a couple other recent studies that have come out. So this may be a somewhat general trend, which is interesting because males rarely are better than females at social intelligence tasks, and this was a very easy research task to find that female superiority has been demonstrated in emotional intelligence, social intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, nonverbal abilities, decoding and communication. And if you ever looked at a paper on that just reviews these sex differences, consistently females tend to score higher than males on these kinds of tasks. So there's 2 hypothesized effects that may account for the sex difference. It might be A, that heterosexual men they have a motivation to be accurate because they have a discriminating clientele. Females looking for long-term mates are incredibly discriminating. This is a general feature of females in our species. And because of that, males have a lot of pressure for them to actually know what women actually want. So that might motivate them to be relatively accurate in making those judgments. And additionally, it might be simply the case that given the reputation of males in the mating game, women may be wisest to employ the all he wants is sex, or the commitment skepticism bias.